Welcome to the Spunky Spirit Podcast. I'm your host, psychic medium Carrie Muggs. This is where we learn all things spirit, everything from spiritual gifts, awakenings, ghosts, aliens, and starseeds. Nothing is untouchable, but always fun and spunky. I am honored to be on this spiritual journey with you, so make sure you hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode. Hello, my friends, and welcome to the Spunky Spirit Podcast. I am psychic medium Carrie Muggs, and today we are going to kind of get up close and personal. It is the fall, and I love the fall. It's my favorite. I set all my goals in the fall. I kind of feel like it's a new year for me in the fall. It's my favorite by far. And also, it gets a little spooky in the fall. We have October coming. And so today's episode is going to be a little more, I'm just going to tell you about experiences that I had growing up and some of my family members had. So these are not things that I've read in magazines. These are not experiences that somebody told somebody or somebody. It's either experiences that I've had or someone in my immediate family has had that are weird or like paranormal or just kind of crazy. So besides the point that I would see spirits quite a bit when I was younger, and, I went to a school that was very, a high school that was very old. So there was always, weird lingerings in the halls and things like that. Or if you're in the halls by yourself, that was kind of weird. And I could see and feel spirits around there. And, in my high school years, if you've listened to these podcasts, you know that I kind of drank a lot to try and numb it and trying to stop seeing these things. But it kind of started for me, the weird things, when I was little. Now, if you've listened to some of this, some of the things about, when my dad turned the Christmas tree lights on and things like that. So, but these ones are going to be kind of different, because they're going to be ones that other family members have had and that aren't like, they're kind of out there, but they're immediate family experiences. So, they're not like, I believe fully the people who tell me those stories would not lie or would not be embellishing or making this up. They fully believe they experienced this, and I've had these experiences too. So these are all immediate family experiences and my own. So, for me, it started when I was really young. I actually feel like, I don't want to give away the address, but we really did live in a haunted house. And I thought it was just my abilities. I thought it was just normal. There was kind of some sort of weird lower frequency that lived in our house, and we would be sitting there and the toys would move. Like my brother's dump truck moved across the room one time, and I always felt its presence, but it kind of left me alone, and I didn't know if it was because I was protected or I knew it was there, and it didn't feel great. But there was a room down in the basement called the wood room. My room was downstairs, but it was next door to the wood room. Now, I do have a cousin who I'm not gonna name any of these people because I don't want them to hear if you guys know them. And she would come over and spend the night sometimes, and she would hurry and try and fall asleep because she could feel the presence, and she could also hear it, and she could hear it growling at night, and it would scare her. So she would try and hurry and go downstairs and go to sleep before anybody else because she was so terrified of laying there alone listening to it growling next to the room. So I never heard the growling, but I do remember seeing toys moving. I do remember in my bedroom, lights would turn off all of a sudden, and the basement was pitch black. So when we had lights off, you could hardly see anything in front of you. And I do remember records turning off. Yeah, I had records. That ages me. Or the radio completely turning off. It was kind of an experience living in this house. And I'm not the only one that would see the toys move or would feel the presence. We all kind of knew it was there. We just didn't pay much attention to it. And I remember, my dad would even try and, mess with it sometimes, and that's the first experience I ever had with a Ouija board, and I just thought it was like a game. Yes, my dad played the Ouija board with me when I was 12. I know. I didn't know what it was. That was my first experience. I didn't have the scary experience until I was in college. And I don't know if you've heard that one, but I'll tell that story too. So that's kind of where it all began for me. And I wasn't ever really kind of scared of it. I just thought it was normal. I thought that that's the way it was. And I always felt protected. I don't know why. I don't know what it was, but I just always felt protected. But sometimes I feel like this thing may have followed me a little bit after high school. But I don't think I'm 100% sure it's not around anymore. So sometimes seeing spirits is a scary, it is a scary thing. It can be uplifting thing. And even if they're your relatives or ancestors, if it's your first experience and it's not normal to you, it can be very scary. So, also too, speaking of the Ouija board, I've told this story many times, I think. I was in college and I was, at University of Idaho, they have this fraternity queen. So there's like different queens of different fraternities. And I went to go visit the fraternity that I was queen at, and all of the guys were downstairs and they were playing with the Ouija board. And I walked downstairs and the board said, it spelled out, tell the bitch to leave. And then the windows, the blinds kind of started like shaking, and it was kind of freaky, and I did leave. And ever since then I kind of was like, okay, I'm not doing any of that kind of stuff. That really did scare me. I don't care if they were just joking. That one I did have a fear about me. And one night when I was in high school, I was spending the night at a friend's house, and I could feel kind of a spirit around, and I asked her about it. I said, do you ever get scared down here? Because her room was also in the basement. I don't know what it is about basements. They kind of have a denser feeling. And she said, well, yeah, the other night, I actually was laying in bed and a ghost appeared, a witch's head spirit appeared while I was laying in bed in front of me, and my dad had to come down and bless my room. And I thought, okay, I can feel, and then I could feel it. I could feel this presence still there, even though the blessing hadn't. So the blessing probably got out of the room, but it was probably still hanging out. This is way back before everybody was doing all the sage and all that stuff. And so I could still feel that it was around, and I just laid on the bed that night. I couldn't sleep at all. I was terrified. Because I could feel that the presence was still there, and she'd had this experience the night before, and her dad had just blessed the room. And so I don't feel like this entity or the frequency was in her room. I feel like it did leave, but I still feel like it was still present in the house, in the basement area. So those are some of the things. Those are just some of the things that I kind of experienced when I was younger. And other than I could tell when people were lying, I could tell when different friends, that we would go to high school with, I could tell if they were pregnant. I knew a friend of ours was pregnant before she even told anybody, but I just had these intuition or these different thoughts. And yes, in a high school that's very, very old and lots of spirits, I could feel the spirits around or lingering in the hallways. Or I was also in the student body presidency, and we had a meeting room downstairs, and I could feel spirits down there too that were down in the basement. I don't know what it is about basements. It's crazy. It must be the energy down there that they feel safe. So those are just some of the things that I kind of experienced, and those are just like some of the main things. I did remember one night I was sleeping, and I was trying to go to sleep. I wasn't asleep yet, and I was crying because at this point, if you guys know, I live in Idaho Falls, Idaho, and it's a very LDS religious kind of place. At that time when I was 10, most everybody or a lot of people were LDS, and a lot of my friends were. And it was and I'm not saying anything about anybody, but some of my friends could not play with me because I wasn't LDS. Not every family does that. It's not a rule. Just, I probably wasn't a great influence on some people when I was younger, especially with all the stuff that I would get into or do. But anyways, now I kind of forgot where I was going with this story now. So I wanted to be LDS like some of my friends because I wanted to be LDS because I wanted to be popular with my friends, not because it was a religious thing. And so I went to my mom and I said, I want to be baptized. And she said, why? And I said, because I want a Book of Mormon like everybody gets when they get baptized. Because back in those days, they used to like decorate a Book of Mormon and give it to you when you were baptized. And she's like, that's not a good reason why. You need to know what you're getting into. And so I went to bed crying that night because I couldn't join this church. And I remember my great grandma came to me at the edge of the bed and she said, it's okay. Everything's going to be all right. You're going to go in the way you need to go. Everything's going to be okay. Don't worry about it. And I just remember feeling so at peace and so loved and so guided. And I thought that was an amazing experience. And so that was one of my great experiences that I lovingly remember, not one that scared me. And some of these, I fully believe that the thing that lived next to my room was a lower frequency. I feel like it was scary. It was malevolent. I think malevolent means yes, malevolent. And I think that it did have ill intentions, but I think that most of the time I was pretty protected by my ancestors and my guides and my grandma. So it wasn't too scary. So I didn't feel like it was too scary or threatened at all. And I have told the story about how I saw a spirit. I was in the bedroom upstairs at the time when I was younger. And I was probably about 7 or 8. And I saw a spirit walk. We lived on the corner lot. And I saw a spirit like go through the fence, because I was looking outside and we had sliding glass doors, and the spirit went through the fence and up to the door. And I screamed and ran to my mom's room, and I could hardly even function. I was so terrified. So different little things. So just know too. So sometimes when your kids come to you and are scared, these things can be legit. They can be real. And so just kind of, asking about it, have him. My little grandson, he's only 3, and he can tell you a story that he saw a ghost come into his house. He woke up and the ghost was right there, and the mama ghost had to come get him, and it scared him, and he had some PTSD for a couple nights because he even told his primary teacher about the ghost. She said she was talking to him and she said, name a time that you were scared and that you could pray and feel safe. And he said, when the ghost came in my room. And he still, to this day, that probably happened a year ago, he still swears there's a ghost that came in his room. So these things, now this one, I think I didn't feel like this one was bad or out to hurt, especially if the mom came to get it was a child ghost and the mom came to get it. They live in a big field, and I'm pretty sure that the ghost maybe was aware that my grandson was in this room and wanted to say hi. But for a 4-year-old or for anybody who hasn't seen ghosts, it's very terrifying. It can be very terrifying and very scary. So, and other things that have happened is my house was haunted. That was one thing growing up. My husband, now I'm going to go talk about some other people who have had experiences that I fully believe happened to them. And I don't do this story justice because my husband is such a great man, and he's a great, great storyteller. Not storytelling as embellishing stories, but he knows how to tell a story, and that's pretty funny. So he has seen Bigfoot, and I, used to get embarrassed when he would tell this story to everybody. But then I was like, why would I be embarrassed of something that's his truth, that he believes in, that he saw? And how different is it me telling people I'm a medium? He sees Bigfoot, I see ghosts. Like, how different is that, right? So he really doesn't care if I tell this story. In fact, I think most of the people who I tell these stories about don't care. He was up on, so I told you I live in Idaho Falls, Idaho. So in Rexburg, Idaho, this is where BYUI is. And this is where there's lots of people that go up in the hills and make out. There's a there's a place up in Rexburg called the Rexburg Bench. Now, I've never been there. I don't know what it's like, but he was up there with his girlfriend and soon to be wife. And they were, quote, talking. And they were by themselves. And all of a sudden, it was like a horror movie, like a real horror movie. And she could hear something outside the car. And she was like, what is that? And he's like, oh, it's nothing. Because, he's a, college kid. He wants to, they're up there making out. So anyways, he's like, it's nothing. And so they start talking again. And then all of a sudden, she hears it again and she's like, no, seriously, there's something out there. So classic horror story movie. He rolls down the window and he looks out the window, sticks his head out there and he can't see anything. It's all dark. He can't see anything. So he rolls up the window and he's like, I promise there's nothing there. So after a few minutes, he starts to hear something and he's like, okay, wait. There is something. I can hear something around the truck, like walking around the truck. I can hear heavy footprints. So he's like, maybe we should get out of here because he's starting to get a little freaked out at this point too. So he wipes off of course, the windows are a little fogged up. So he wipes off the windows and he turns on the headlights and he looks out and there's a Bigfoot standing right in front, like right in the headlights. They can see it. And it's not a bear. He's terrified of bears. So he would know if it was a bear. It was legit a standing up like Bigfoot hairy thing. And he said you could tell by the eyes. If it was a bear, it'd be different. He's like, the eyes were red. And he started the car, classic horror story, couldn't start it, was terrified. And the thing just stood there and watched him, just stood there and looked at him. She's screaming. She's pulling his hair, trying to get him to go, and he starts the car. He slams on the gas, turns, and starts to take off. And then all of a sudden, the thing starts running beside him for a little bit. I think it was just trying to scare him. He gets faster, takes off down the road, and they're both terrified. And to this day, they both acknowledge that it happened. So, and he said he has had one other experience. He didn't actually see the Bigfoot this time. He was up in a camper with a bunch of friends and they could hear it walking outside around the camper. And the reason why he knew is because they could smell it. The smell was like of wet skunk. It was so gross. And if you hear some Bigfoot stories, they'll say that you can smell it. And I think that they were up around the same, I don't know if they were on their Rexburg Bench. I think they were somewhere else up in Idaho, and he could smell it. And then somebody went out there to go look at it. They couldn't find anything, but they could still have this awful smell. So they were like trying to roll up all the windows, in these campers, these old campers. And then all of a sudden, like 5 or 10 minutes later, they heard this like horrible screeching howl. And it wasn't like anything, it wasn't like a wolf, it wasn't like anything that he's ever heard. It terrified him. So he's had some lots of Bigfoot, the 2 Bigfoot experiences. And we live in Idaho, so we know, there's a lot of people, there's even a couple books written. I don't know who the author is, but she has written lots of stuff about Bigfoot being in Idaho. It's so crazy to me. I really feel like there is some sort of portal thing going on with these Bigfoot. I don't think that they're hiding. I think that there's a portal of some sort that they go in and out. I've talked about portals in my last episode. So now my husband can also very much see ghosts sometimes too, which is awesome because he understood my gift when I met him. And so that's why it was so nice to have somebody understand. He also had experiences where he saw a ghost downstairs in his basement in his fruit room. In the olden days, we used to call it fruit rooms, I guess. That's where we used to hold storage and stuff. And anyways, he has had experiences with ghosts too. So when I would do readings out of our house at first, our room would get extremely cold because it would be the spirits that were waiting to kind of talk to whatever clients came the next day. And sometimes he would wake up and see the spirits or smell like perfumes or things. And he would sometimes wake up and see spirits standing at the edge of the bed. And he knew, he'd be like, Carrie, there's somebody here for you. Or he just kind of knew. So once we moved my office to a different place, then that stopped happening. And our room wasn't as freezing. And that he hasn't had any experiences where he wakes up to that anymore either. So I thought that was kind of cool. He also has had an experience with skinwalkers. Those are Native American beliefs. They're wolves. They transform into wolves and humans. They're shapeshifters. And I'm not going to tell that story because I don't know the details of it. He's told it to me before, but I don't know exactly where it was or how it happened. It was when he was on a mission. He was on a mission for his church, and he was in New Mexico, and he had an experience where that happened. So I thought that was kind of interesting because he could probably tell it, and maybe one day I'll tell it when I get the more details, but I don't think I could remember the details to do the story justice. So he's also had lots of experiences, which is nice because I'm with somebody who doesn't think that I'm crazy or things are crazy, someone who understands and someone who can go through it together. In fact, one day I kind of hope that we can kind of do something together paranormal. Like maybe we could do ghost hunting or something, and but he's a little freaked out from some of these experiences, so he doesn't want to mess with it. And so it's pretty funny, but he's had some pretty cool experiences too. Now, one time too, I was just a brand new mom, and we lived in an apartment, and my grandma came to visit me and my great grandma, the one who came to visit me when I was that story when I was 10 and I was trying to decide if I was sad because I couldn't join a church. That grandma was my grandma Weeks, and she came to visit me and told me everything was going to be okay. Well, my grandma, her daughter, came to help me with my daughter. My daughter was just born. She was really colicky, and I was really struggling. And my grandma came to stay with me for a week, and we had just gone through an episode where my daughter had cried nonstop for like hours, and we were tired, and we were handing her off to each other, and we both sat down, and she was asleep. And we finally got her to sleep, and then she woke up and started crying all of a sudden, like in her sleep, like it was crazy. And my grandma just said, man, I wish my mom was here to help. And all of a sudden, one of the mobile on my daughter's crib just started playing music and turning, and my daughter instantly went back to sleep. It was the craziest thing, and I firmly believe that was my grandma. I feel like my grandma has watched over me all the time when I was littler. She passed away when I was a little younger, and so I feel like she watched over me, and she was there that day when that happened too. I thought that was incredible, and my grandma just sat and cried because it was such a moving experience for her. So now my dad, he was such a sci-fi thriller. He loved Stephen King. He loved all the scary things. And I think it was because he also was an alcoholic. And I think that was because he had a gift. He had the mediumship gift. And he was very empathic, and he didn't understand it. So he would drink a lot too to try and self-medicate. But he did have an experience with a UFO. I remember him telling me. Now, he was in the Air Force, and so he did a lot of Air Force stuff. But one day, when he was younger, or when he was, I can't remember how old he was, but there is a baseball field behind his house. There was a baseball field behind his house, or he lived by a baseball field. I can't remember if he was in the house anyways, he lived by a baseball field. It's now called Melaleuca Field. Back in the day, it was called McDermott Field in Idaho Falls. And he lived close to this field, and he remembers going and he was walking, and all of a sudden he looked up, and above the baseball field, he did see a huge UFO type structure, like a disc type thing. And he thought it was crazy. He thought he was crazy. He didn't understand it. And he will always remember it. And then ever since then, not since then, before that he was into, but he totally believed in aliens. He did not really believe in God. I think he kind of believed in God in the sense that there was a source or a creator, but not the kind of God that religion believes in. And he believed that there were other beings out in space or out in the universe. He just really thought that we were really arrogant to think that we were the only people, we were the only things ever that existed anywhere. So he was very, very into UFOs and space and things like that. And that's where I think he would sometimes show me up in the sky where different constellations were. And we were always looking at the stars. So he really was interested in that stuff. So that was one of my favorite memories with him. And he did have, he didn't see any aliens, anything like that. He just saw the disc above the baseball field. And I was telling my Patreon group about this during one of our Coffee with Carries, and one of the people inside the group were like, "Oh my gosh, I remember that. I went to school in Idaho Falls during that time, and everyone was talking about it." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, that's so crazy." So it's kind of nice to be validated that my dad actually really saw that it was really, really cool. So those are some of the things. I'm sure my family, there's an incident that my mom had that was really scary for her, and I'm not going to talk about that just because she does believe in this stuff, but she doesn't want to mess with anything that's bad. So she kind of had an experience that was scary to her, and I think my kids have had some experiences too. I mean, they have to, right, with living with me. But I don't want to share those experiences about my kids because my kids, some of their friends are my clients or they listen to me, and I don't want to, talk about anything that my kids wouldn't want me to. So, but we have had just our own experiences have been so cool and so awesome. And I think that a lot of times when we have some of these experiences I agree, by low frequencies, but some of them are from maybe other things that are reaching out that we think are different or not normal, and we don't understand it, so we're scared of it. So I know that I am fully protected, and I just really feel strongly that some of these things are there is duality. And there is polarity. Everything, there is good and bad to everything. So there's good people and bad people. And there's good spirits and bad spirits. Some spirits have good intentions and some spirits do not. And I would rather not deal with the spirits that do not. But sometimes I feel like there's spirits out there that need help or are lost souls. And some mediums would disagree with me. But I've kind of had some experiences lately where I kind of believe that there are, and I kind of want to help that. So you might start seeing some mediumship from me, and I mean, obviously readings and stuff, and I don't really talk about the readings. Cool things happen during the readings, and so many synchronicities, but I don't share the readings because they're private, and they're sacred to the people that I give. But I am going to start sharing my paranormal experiences with you more, because I do feel like readings and everything mediumship is awesome, but there is a side to it too that is sometimes scary, and some mediums say it's not scary and that we're just making it up, and it's stuff that's inside of us that's coming out. We create our own demons, and I 100% do not agree with that. I believe that there's got to be there's spirits out there that are struggling, or they're spirits that I want to help, and I want to know the answers, and I want to figure them out. So some of these podcasts are going to be you coming on that journey with me. So I'm going to North Carolina next week to stay with some friends, do some readings there, do some work there, and I'm going to I think it's Wellington, North Carolina. It's the number 5 top rated ghost walk in the United States. I'm going to be doing that next week, and I'm going to talk to you about it and tell you how I felt. Now, it used to be that I would not go near this stuff because I didn't even want to deal with it. But you know what? As a medium, it's my job. It's my job to experience this stuff, to help you experience it and see if this is what you want to do. So you can't do a job and just pick all the good things, right? And as long as I'm not in danger and I know I'm protected, I am going to full go for this and to help others that want to do this too. And I just feel like I want the answers. I want to know the answers. I want to research this and know what's going on and know why. I just am such a strong, why does this happen kind of person. I need to know all the answers. So next week, I'm going to go on this ghost walk, and I'm going to tell you all about it. And I'm going to tell you if I felt anything while I was there. And ghost walks, I think, are mostly about history, but it's going to be interesting because I'm going to start seeing if I actually feel anything or if I see anything. And if I ever feel unsafe, I will leave. But just be prepared because we're going to start doing these things. I'm going to start taking you along with me on this journey, especially in the fall. I think it will be kind of interesting. I don't mean to make it scary, and I don't mean to put anybody in danger. It's going to be kind of a fun look at it and see if it's real, see if it's legit, see if it's got some actual substance to it. So I hope you guys are along for the journey. It'll be fun. And I still will put some up. You know, this podcast is just a fun look at all this kind of stuff. And so I hope you enjoy it, and I hope you enjoy the journey with us. Now, you just remember that you believe what you believe, and let others be kind to others and let them believe what they want to believe too. So I hope that's good for you guys. And I think I am going to be gone next week, so I don't really have anything coming up. I do have a spirit circle coming up, September 22nd. And if you want to have questions, you can join my Patreon. I do a monthly meditation, a monthly message, a weekly reading, and I do question and answers every month. I do a moon ceremony there, and we're starting to do online spirit circles there too. So if you want more of this stuff and you want to know the behind the scenes stuff, that's where you'd want to go as my Patreon. So I will leave the Patreon down at the bottom. And also too, if you are just starting your awakening and you're kind of not sure, and this is all brand new to you, there's a link at the bottom in the show notes that talk to my Awakening Your Senses class. It will talk about protecting. It'll talk about the clairs. It'll talk about the way you talk to spirit, your guides, your the chakras, everything you need to know if you're experiencing awakening. So I love you guys, and I mean it, and I will see you guys next week. If you like this episode, please share it on your social media.